recorded live.
Good morning, good evening, wherever you may be across the nation or around the world. Once again, you are listening to the VMware Communities Roundtable podcast. This is podcast number 603. My name is Eric Nelson. With me today, I have my regular co-host, Matt Lungeth. Today is Wednesday, May 4th, 2022. Matt, how you doing?
Eric, I am well. Did you happen to catch the last Apple earnings report?
I did not. Are we just going to rename planet Earth the Apple Earth or something like that?
I'm going to play a little bit of connect the dots here, so bear with me, right? So in the last Apple earnings report, what they considered was wearables, right? Which is AirPods, Apple Watches, and whatnot. Sales for the quarter were $8.8 billion. So to put that in perspective, sales for the iPad were only 7.6, and it's within $1 billion of overall Mac sales for the quarter. So if you would take that and extrapolate it out of just the wearables division for Apple, it would be a Fortune 100 company within the United States.
I can totally understand that. You know what I've decided, Matt? That about half of that revenue is in people's dresser drawers, one AirPod, because you've lost the other one and you buy another set, you lose it. You can't pair the two that you've got. You've got to buy a third set. So that's what I'm thinking. I think they got a racket going.
Well, I think about from the EUC side of the house, right? And how this might relate to operators and how this plays into VMware Explore, just like we had talked about back on episode 600 with Alastair Cooke and Sandra Hahn, how all of these devices that are out there, right? This proliferation of wearable devices that may or may not have corporate information on and that requires some type of security controls on it are becoming more and more ubiquitous out there. And that we are now entering and introducing our security and management portfolio to these particular devices and the operators that manages those environments. So it's just yet another example, I would say, as we start to talk about the Explore platform of potential operators that are out there within the VMware ecosystem that aren't the traditional virtualization admin. And to that end, we do have Alastair Cooke with us, a great friend of the show, to talk about all things vBrownbag at the event today. But before we get to that, sir, my favorite questions of you that I always ask. How are things out in the West Coast? How is the weather out there today? And what is the color of the bay?
Let me tell you, we're doing fine out here in the West Coast. It got warm. In fact, summer just shows up. That's what happens on the West Coast. It's rainy, cold, and all of a sudden it gets hot. So it was like 80 degrees yesterday, warm and beautiful. I did get out to the bay, and it is a nice, clean, shining green, right? A little bit lighter green because it is beautiful and sunny here in Silicon Valley. So I'm happy with that. VMware Campus opened up, so we've been having events up on the campus and trying to avoid Omicron best we can with the mixes of masks and open air events outside. So it's kind of fun to be back with people. I did get a piece of that where I ran into. We had a 50-person event where everybody was there. Linda Britt, that runs the event team and has run VMworlds in the past. She was there. A lot of her crew was there, along with a lot of the other marketing people were there. And it was amazing to see people after 2 years, right? It's like it almost brings you to tears because these are your long working environment people that, you see them on the Zoom camera. Matt, I see you on the Zoom camera, but when you're in 3D and you actually can,
it's that real life thing. It's strange territory, right?
It is a very moving experience to recognize how well you feel getting to be in the presence. You see the old dog movies where the dog feels, gets to come home and see their master comes over. It's like you have that feeling of elated jump on them and not get COVID at the same time. So it is good. That's what's going on in the Bay Area. If things are opening up, I'm excited. I'm excited about VMware Explore as we go forward. And so with that, let's get to the show. The last bit of news is obviously everybody knows August 29th is VMworld through September 1st. Registration opened up yesterday. yesterday. So if you didn't notice, registration is open. You can go get yourself registered. And it's perfect to have Alastair here to talk about his experience with regards to things opening up. And then, of course, VMworld Europe is November 7th through the 10th. I don't know if that's up live or not, whether you can go register for both of them or whether it's just US. I think it's probably both. I think they just opened up Reg. So go check that out. And then vBrownbag.com. Alastair, do some intro here, but vBrownbag.com, go check that out. That's their URL. They got a lot of great podcasts out there. And Alastair, welcome to the show. As always, we get you back at least once a year. Good to see you in non 3D. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? 1 minute elevator pitch, who you are, how long you've been working in the VMware ecosystem, a little bit about a vBrownbag, and then we'll get to all things events.
Thanks, Eric, and thanks for inviting me in again for my annual appearance pre-conference. My name, obviously, is Alastair Cooke. I am the chief cat herder at vBrownbag and have been doing this video creation at the VMware conference since 2012. And we basically came up with the idea of having a community call for papers, have people present it at the conference who wouldn't make it into the primary schedule. Now, this comes out of the vBrownbag podcast, where we've been producing video education and training for probably Cody Bunch had started that 6 or 8 years beforehand, as he was studying for his VMware certification. So we have, as you say, Eric, hundreds of videos online of the community teaching community about things. So we went through VMware certifications early on. We've headed on towards wider data center skills, particularly a lot more about that transition that a lot of people have been making from being virtualization specialists to actually having quite a lot of cloud operations or some transitions towards DevOps spaces too. So the same transition that everybody else has been going through in their careers, we've been helping them to progress those along.
Yeah, that sums it up, that whole transition. So we are coming into VMware Explore, and I do look at vBrownbag and I see, how you have grown that site, right? And, because of pandemic and online, you do have a lot, a really nice organization of content now, right? Like that, I think that has certainly matured over the last 2 years.
Yeah, there's just the things that the vBrownbag community. So we are a community of volunteers. There are somewhere around 35 active volunteers actually making sure that the vBrownbag podcasts happen and presenting those podcasts. So I actually stay nicely away from that. There's a whole bunch of people in the different time zones, both US and EMEA, who organize those. And incidentally, there's also Spanish language and Brazilian Portuguese content out of vBrownbag too. Just what we find is that as community members want to learn about subject areas, they then want to share those learnings, or at least a subset want to share those learnings. And those are the people who come through to vBrownbag. So
two elements that I think have happened over the last couple of years, which you're touching on, which is one, and I don't know which one we should do first. One is everything has gone online. We're not doing in-person events as much, right? And obviously maybe that'll turn back on, but your thoughts on where you think this is going to go, because I go to the office. It was fun to go to the office, but in the end, I looked at my experience for that last week that I was in the office. I'm like, I was half as productive as I normally would be, just because I've gotten so efficient at running my life, being in Zoom meetings, engaging with all on the online tools, all the SaaS tools, everything. So like the one question is, do we think this learning environment that, you have clearly changed, you have all the podcasts up there. Where do you think this is going to land?
So I think to be clear, we haven't really changed what we do with vBrownbag. It has always primarily been an online community sharing through regular recordings and distribution of the content. What has changed is our ability to do in person. So the Tech Talks is really the core of what we've done in person, and that has not quite worked the same as it has previously, in the same way that the last two VMware conferences haven't been in person.
Right.
But as a wider context, absolutely, online delivery of education as well as all of our more knowledge-oriented work is a reality. So I think
Have you
we're seeing that way overdue transition away from everybody driving into the office at 9 a.m. and that nightmare of traffic on the 101, to people working from home, not having to travel so much, being able to be more productive because they're working in their own space. But the studies around productivity in office say that your productive time in office is on average about 30% of your time in office.
right?
And so if, Eric, you found that you can get 50% productivity time by working from home, well, you've just delivered a lot more value to the organization, whilst also freeing up that other 50% to do things that are valuable to you.
That's right. That's right. Or getting to do special projects or whatever. Yeah, whatever I feel is valuable to me. Have you tried to go to any physical events yet? I mean, I believe Amazon had AWS reInvent, and John Furrier with theCUBE did go, I think, and do some work there. I saw on the vBrownbag site you have Dell World, or Dell, whatever they call Dell conference.
Dell Technologies World,
Dell
which is actually on this week.
Right.
So that's on in person this week. I've not left New Zealand since early 2020. I was my work life is partly teaching AWS training courses, so that used to be traveling around Australia and New Zealand delivering the courses. It's now traveling across my front lawn to here in my shed quarters and delivering those courses over Zoom. So no, I haven't yet been to any in-person events. I'm expecting that VMware Explore is going to be my first overseas travel since this began, and definitely my first US travel. I've not been to the US since late 2019.
And Matt, I know you have spent a little bit more time traveling in your role as a field SE, or what your daytime role
TAM.
is. Are you
AWS
experiencing, what are you experiencing there?
So actually, last week was one of our first large customer events. I will say it was for a global level customer where we were able to gather at one of their North American regional offices. Prior to that, I had been meeting with customers, but in much smaller groups, 6, 10, maybe at the most, the absolute most. It is a noticeable change, and even within the last couple of months, both from a VMware corporate policy and from what you would see from these large enterprise and global level organizations, where they have now either started to have personnel return back to the offices, some type of new hybrid deployment, or where you see where it's more a little ad hoc, where we can get together as on an ad needed basis with teams to do special one-off events.
Yeah, I know that Graham says there are still management that wants to see butts in seats sometimes. And I know that one of my children, they all work in tech. And one of them has said, yeah, we want mandatory 3 days a week now. Right. And so that, and everybody's cringing because it's like, it all sounded exciting at the beginning. But then as you start to do this, then you realize what's sitting in a workplace is all day. They got a ton of pushback. So then they introduced free meals every day, and they still had a ton of pushback, because it's one thing to get together and see everybody. It's another thing to have to do it every day. Alastair, to your point of 101 traffic, right? And even airline flights. Like I got to imagine that you're kind of happy. What did you call it? Your shed? Your
here in my shed quarters.
Shed quarters. That's awesome. Yeah, love that. Right. There just is, as much as you don't get frequent flyers miles, you don't have to. And New Zealand is far away.
Well, yeah, it only typically took me about 20 hours to get from my house to Moscone to come and do the tech talks. And yeah, I don't miss being on the plane all the time. Airpoints are lovely, but they're really a bit of a booby prize. They mean that you spent too much time on a plane.
Right. It's like getting another free laptop. It's like, I already have too many laptops. I already have too many computers in my life. I don't need a prize for another one. Now it gets back to the reality of we're transitioning. Obviously, this show is supposed to be about VMware Explore and the fact that we are trying to get people back, and we are trying to get people to sign up for Tech Talks at VMworld. The talk thing has been a little bit weird this year, where they didn't do an open call for papers. They did kind of a call for ideas, but didn't do a call for papers. And I think as we're turning this all back on, I think even community members are questioning, do I go? Do I do a paper? And I know you've got an article on, a call for papers for VMware. You call it VMworld on your website. You might want to rename that Explore. But you do have a call for papers there. Everybody knows what that is anyway. For me, it feels like even the event team is going slow around getting schedule sessions. They've got an event calendar that they're going to publish, the content calendar, but it just seems like everything is in a little bit slow motion, where everybody says they're going to drive to work, but everybody's going to go to VMware Explore. But now Reg is open, and we have to make that leap, and we have to, decide to buy a set of masks or whatever we're going to do, and then go sign up, for a talk as well. Do you feel that way around, what you're doing with vBrownbag?
So two aspects to it. I do find that this is the organization is kind of a little split on this, of the let's get this thing happening, let's make it go, but we're not. I just get the feeling that it's not quite fully committed. Everybody is looking over their shoulder, thinking, is the other shoe going to drop and we're going to be stopped from doing this in person at short notice again? I think that's getting in the way of progress to commit to it. So
did that happen last year? I'm trying to remember. Did we announce VMworld last year and then unannounce it? I can't remember what we did.
Last year was always announced as online. It was the previous year that the initial announcement was in person, and I'd booked hotel rooms and all of that, but then it got pulled back. But so there's an element of this sort of concern that the other shoe is going to drop, and my wife gave me a stern talking to and said, you just got to commit and go forward. And that's what I've done. And
I looked at my budget, same kind of thing, right? I'm looking at budget, and we could go to Amazon reinvents a lot of fun, where we go and do the code with Raspberry Pis, and we had a ton of fun there. But at the same time, we want to make a big commitment to VMworld. But VMworld hasn't been live in 2 years, and it is a question of how many people are going to be ready to come, and how much budget do I commit? How much do I say? Because if you guys don't know, to do the community booth and do community theater in New York, in San Francisco, it's $180,000, right? To, put budget to going and building out the sets and building out the booth and the blogger tables and beanbag chairs and everything. And that stuff doesn't come free. To have camera labor. Remember that we have to buy union labor for your camera crew, even though you guys are doing all the recording, they require us to buy the camera crew. So it's and the camera crew is $20K per camera crew. So if I have to hire a labor to shadow you guys, they charge me $20K for the shadow, the privilege of a union guy, helping. I think they do some help. I think.
I've completely transitioned around on that one and fully use the union guys.
The union guys.
I mean,
they're there. They're trained.
The union crew do actually the production for us, and they're much happier to do that than just sit around and watch. But I don't think it's the most exciting gig for them anyway, because we don't have a huge amount for them to do.
So that's where we came into okay, and you have these kind of choices for the vExpert party, right? We bought $50,000 to get the ping pong table venue for the evening, where I think it was pool tables we did last time in San Francisco, but we have also done the barbecues and pinball museums, all that. But you have to then, to your wife's point, Alastair, it's you have to just make a commitment and say, okay, it maybe be empty. So I did talk to Linda Britt, who runs the event team. She's the VP of events. She runs all buck stops there. And we talked about it, where is this line? And she's yeah, we just have to fully commit. And if it's a third empty or if it's half empty, that's okay, right? Like we're going to completely commit so that people that do come feel like, it's there and it's worth it and we should have a good time. I still don't know about masks, right? Like, am I going to be able to do I feel comfortable showing up with no mask, or do I get a cool VMware mask? I don't know, but
yeah, I have been wondering whether the vBrownbag swag this year is going to be vBrownbag branded masks.
Yeah, so we're running a thing. You heard it here first. It's going to be exclusive. We did the Lego characters a couple of years ago. This year we're doing sock puppets. So there's a really cool on Amazon shopping. You can go there and you look for sock puppets and sock puppets. And what they do is you take your branded VMware code or vExpert or vMug sock, and then you put X for eyes, and you make a tongue and a mouth and a little hair, and this is all just printed on the sock. So it's a VMware code puppet. Then we're going to have like 5 different puppets, so that when you come back to your Zoom calls, you can kind of do little puppet gigs, right? So, and then you can have a pair of socks at the same time that are branded. So that's I don't think we're going to do the masks just because that's so too cliche. But I think I actually do have some VMware code masks that we never gave away, but I think we will do. It wouldn't surprise me if the venue team does, VMware Explore masks for everybody in a backpack. I know they're doing backpacks again, so we'll get to see. So we got to do a shout out to the registration to see if we can get people to commit to coming to the show and then registering. I actually thought we might get more registrations for vBrownbag sessions because they didn't really open up a call for papers. So if you wanted to come present, and you do get a session ID, so you're going to be in Schedule Builder. So the cool thing about the vBrownbag sessions is at VMware Explore, you get to have a legitimate session.
I've done like 17 times this week, right? Where we mispronounced what is the rebranded name. And Eric, I'm just going to pause you there for 1 second as far as the logistics of this, as far as the sign up form. So, Alastair, this is over on vBrownbag, and that's the US spelling for brown. So vBrownbag.com. And then if you search through over on the blog tab, there is a vBrownbag Tech Talks at VMworld 2022 entry. And then from there is a Google Sheet sign-up form that Alastair has provided for if you are interested and you have an interest in presenting within this vBrownbag forum. Fill out the form. That goes over to Alastair, and then Alastair has his process. Eric, back to you.
Yeah, I just want to encourage everybody to go tell us, because I think that if I look at it, it's obviously slow because people are looking over their shoulder. I know I've talked to a lot of people that said they've gone and registered, right, and started to book their hotels. So I know
I've had a significant amount of customers that were chomping at the bit yesterday. Eric, you and I had talked about when registration was opening up. That was because customers were asking. It's a surprising amount of US-based customers that are very eager to attend this event.
Yeah, so I'm getting that feedback now. It's kind of like you got to be careful because you're in your own ecosystem. So you're hearing the people that want to tell you that they're going to go, right? But you're not talking to the other 20, 50,000 people that are on the fence. But I think we are looking for sessions, right? And we are going to be there. And so, Alastair, if you do a session, we're going to record it. We're going to have it in Schedule Builder. People will go to the regular venue via explore.com and be able to watch the live stream. Do you also put this on vBrownbag, all the recordings?
So we publish them all up on the vBrownbag YouTube channel. And we have a separate podcast feed for vBrownbag Tech Talks. And so what we'll have is that a random tech talk will play in this podcast, drawn from the pool of tech talks that have been made in the last year and a bit. We've I'm just trying to think whether I actually put last year's into that feed. I think I did, but we've run out of that feed. It's gone quiet because we've run out of podcast of content. So yeah, it goes into one of the two podcasts. It gets published to the vBrownbag YouTube channel with thousands of subscribers there, and then I usually do a blog post on vBrownbag.com that includes the full schedule list and links to all of the shows. I've also changed one of the links on the very front page because, as Matt said, it was a bit buried before. So if you go to vBrownbag.com, there's a green link on the front page that says sign up VMware Explore Tech Talks, and that links directly to my form.
I love
Fantastic.
the real-time nature of your work, Alastair, because that's awesome.
I also have changed the sign-up form so it no longer has the old name of the conference currently known as Explore.
Yeah, real time. I love it. I could see that you were typing, so that's awesome. And I got to ask another question. I'll also talk about vBrownbag. I love scrolling down below the fold and seeing all your speaker lists and the pictures of everybody. And it's like, it feels like to me like a who's who of friends of VMware over time, right? Like it's a fantastic list. How many?
I would encourage anyone to go out there and look at. There was 111 individual talks last year virtually for the 2021 event alone. So as we're waiting for this new content out there for the in-person event, not just, obviously, Alastair can speak to this, not just 2021, but all of the major events that were out there. I'm not sure how far that we go back on the channel itself, but even if we just wanted to consume last year's content, is kind of a preview for what might be coming, and some of those great speakers, Eric, that you were referring to there. 111 individual videos on a wide range of topics: Workspace ONE, HCX, NSX. The gamut of the VMware portfolio out there from some very, very proficient and influential speakers and SMEs on those given topics.
Yeah, I just shout out Kyle Ruddy, Josh Atwall, right? Cato Grace, just Emad Jonas. It's like a friends list. Cody Bunch, Chris Williams.
So it is quite literally a list of my friends in there, because there's so many of these people that I've known through conferences, but also many of the crew have come with me to the different VMware conferences, and when we're doing OpenStack conferences. These are people that I've definitely sat down, shared a meal with, shared a drink with, and they're just some of my favorite people around. And we are open to new volunteers. So there are new people joining us, taking part and producing the videos, particularly producing the podcast on a weekly basis. And as you look through that list, some of those people are less familiar because they're newer members who has just started to contribute in this way. But as you say, Eric, lots of these people have ended up in very interesting places of careers strongly within VMware or some of the related technology partners as well.
Yeah, and you just look at everybody, and it's like you get this warm, fuzzy feeling, like Adam Eckerly, Ariel Sanchez, and I haven't seen any of these people in like 3 years, right? Like, and I've worked with some of them, like you have, right? Like, worked on stuff, did vid codathons with Ariel Sanchez, just like fun things. It's like I talk about the one dog that comes home it's like, if you go to Explore, there's gonna be like 30 dogs that you haven't seen forever that you're like, oh, okay. But yet you still work with them. You're still doing stuff with them. Everybody's still in the ecosystem, making a living. It's just, you haven't seen anybody in 3D. So I would argue that might be fun. Do you know how many of your people are talking about? Do you get a sense of whether anybody's going to go to Explore?
For people who are coming as attendees, I think it's still fairly early to make that commitment, and I think that's the issue. Is again that uncertainty leads to late commitments. I know I've been talking to a couple of people. So Chris Williams is probably going to be with me in Barcelona, and of course Dan Belmont. He lives just outside Barcelona, so he'll be there with us as well. Right. So we should have a few people. Absolutely, the people who don't like to travel, the people who have found the online delivery of the events is better. Right. People who also don't like the massed numbers of jammed together humans may well choose not to attend in person. Eric, we haven't yet worked out whether we're going to be able to live stream this year. I suspect we're probably going to have the same challenges we've had previously around that. And so we will try as vBrownbag and get our sessions posted up onto the YouTube channel as quickly as possible so that we near real time on there. And it's possible that we'll be able to set up a delayed stream, so maybe an hour delayed. I'll be working with Jeffrey Powers at Geekazine to work out our production for that. But quite likely we'll have something that is near real time, even if we can't do live stream.
Yeah, I'm still in the same boat for the VMware code sessions as well. Not sure I'm even going to have the budget or want to put the camera crew there to record them. We have done pre-recordings in the past, so I might do, and we don't have that many either. Like we're talking, 25 code sessions. Maybe we pre-record them with the speakers, right? And have them, they do it live at the venue, and then we publish in real time the pre-recorded code session from the speaker at the same time. So that is they just signed the deal with Jack Morton maybe last week for the space. So they haven't really come to us yet and started to talk about, they just told us, expect us to get less and spend more. But last
welcome to the current economic climate.
Right, exactly. Now we are definitely not having a separate area. 2 years ago we had code over in Moscone West for US, and we're just gonna have one area this year. Obviously we're not going to do that ever again, because we didn't like splitting the community up. I thought it was not as much fun for everybody to be kind of code or over in the area with the community and blogger tables and you guys. So switching gears here for a little bit to just the second topic, which is, VMware is pushing for multi-cloud now, right? We're building SaaS products to help you manage multi-cloud, right? And I talk about education and the cloud in general. Sometimes I wonder, and maybe now you've had a couple of years to experience this, you probably have good knowledge, which is why I'll ask this. Like when you talk community and cloud, is there a difference? Like if I go to AWS and start looking around for community, I don't really find one, right? And if you look at the hyperscalers, Azure, AWS, Google, like none of them have like that community that VMware has. Have you seen community still be relevant in the cloud era, the transition? And then as we do multi-cloud, maybe there will be a place to have a generic heterogeneous community that does multi-cloud kind of conversations. What's your thoughts around community and cloud and with your experience here?
So I think one of the things is to not look for a community that looks the same as the VMware community. This community has built up around a single vendor and with certainly for the first 10 years, near religious belief in that single company and single technology. And so the communities around other technologies look different. And one of the things to look for is places to be part of a community that already exists, and possibly be a cultural difference, because one of the other differentiating things about the culture that I've seen around VMware is it's been very supportive and positive. Now I see that also through most of the cloud environments. So AWS Heroes is one of the programs that's about community advocacy and leadership through learning. It works in a different way to any of the programs that VMware has had or any of the things that have sprung up around them. So I think there is absolutely community. There's definitely value in community. It just looks different on cloud. One of the big things that I see in community on cloud is that it's around open source software projects, or it's more centered on what's on GitHub than necessarily what's on your own blog. Working on a project at the moment around migration onto Google Cloud, I definitely see that there's value in community-generated content, because looking at Google's content, they have these documents that tell you all of the 400 use cases in one document, and they don't actually give you prescriptive guidance of this is your use case, here's the workflow. So at the moment, that's what I'm going to be doing, is generating some content that is much more focused on here's a particular approach you're following, and it's going to be rooted in what we do in the VMware community and around the idea of moving to a hybrid cloud and multi-cloud environment from that.
Yeah, that is interesting. What you hit on is the apps themselves, and VMware certainly has talked about this shift up the stack to apps, right? And what you're experiencing is, yeah, most people that are running things in clouds, probably 50% of them are open source, MySQL, to, Nginx, to things that are open source that you're putting in that cloud. And then you have to really learn what it means to run those projects, which is maybe a bit different than what we've had to do in the past.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it should be fundamentally different that you're consuming these things as a service. That MySQL is a classic one of, I don't actually want to run that server. Let somebody who specializes run it. I need the DBA components for it. I don't need the looking after the server infrastructure, looking after the virtual machine, looking after the operating system. The provider specializes in that. And I, as a customer, and there are far more customers, have to move closer to the application and closer to the business components.
Yeah, that's I could definitely say it. The other one is just, we have also seen that GitHub becomes the center of the universe, right? When you're talking about sharing things, right? Even community, the VMTN platform where you used to go upload scripts or upload things that you want to share with people. Now a lot of people have their own GitHub repositories, and they're just sharing on the GitHub repository, right? And that's where you go, and it's just becoming part of community now. Right.
And that's how you quantify community contribution in some ways, is having an active and collaborative Git environment. One of the key things as you start heading into that open source space is that it's not just content that you've created, but also other people's content that you've contributed to. That's a fundamental part of open source.
Yeah, and maybe that becomes what makes you a good community member, right? Is how much contributions have you done to various GitHub repositories? And they don't necessarily have to be open source. I mean, William Lamb opens up his stuff, and you go to his stuff, and he lets you join and be a contributor if you want to, right? So he's working on various elements, some of them older, some of them newer, and it is a way to share and be part of a kind of a community effort, but contributing. So yeah, it is.
It goes back to one of the V community's fundamental tenets, right? Share what you know. I mean, it might be in a different platform, it might be in a different forum, but at a 30,000-foot view, share what you know.
Right.
Absolutely, and that's fundamental to what vBrownbag does and how community should be working.
Right. And I see VMware's position here too. There probably is a room for both, or a hybrid environment here, which is VMware is attempting to build a software layer that sits on top of your clouds, right? Just like we build a software layer that sits on top of your hardware. So you could have an abstracted layer that you didn't have to worry about all the cloud, the hardware details. If you build a layer that creates a hypervisor network, but in the cloud sense, then you can build your own apps on top of that. And then you can vMotion your apps, or have your apps migrating from cloud environment to cloud environment, and all working securely. So I think VMware's challenge is to build that layer that allows you to do true multi-cloud computing. And then I think you will need support for the components that we're building, right? To allow you to have that true multi-cloud layer. Now, whether that's something that is economical, and whether that wins in the marketplace is yet to be decided. But my guess would be that you'll probably need community to support and educate yourself on how that layer behaves across the multi-cloud environment.
Yeah, and that's I think the multi-cloud aspect is an interesting part of what makes the community content really differentiated from vendor content, because the community content is usually from people who are hands-on working on this inside their organization, which is always multi-vendor. And so the individual vendors are usually very good at focusing on their own content, but when the rubber meets the road in the real customers, it's always across multiple vendors, and it's always a combination of things that the vendors wouldn't quite have chosen to put together. And so this is where the community content is so valuable, is to be real world, hands-on in that complex, dirty, nasty environment that we call production, rather than the perfect lab environments.
Right. Yeah. Right. Right. Matt, I know that we got a kind of a late start, but we want to be respectful of people's time. So we're 10 minutes till the top of the hour. Anything that strikes you? I think Alastair has answered most of my thought around community and SaaS services, right? Because I think that, that is one of the things that I struggle with when building community and enabling programs for the community, and just being generally a community guy, is how does that play in the multi-cloud world? How does it play in SaaS service world? So the application space, the open source, GitHub, that all makes sense. Anything that strikes you that we should be asking Alastair?
I'm going to ask Alastair my standard questions as we get closer to wrapping the show is we make developments that are out there with vBrownbag for this particular gear as it relates to Explore, and just vBrownbag in general, and some of the new products and offerings and recordings that are out there. How are community members best informed to consume that content, Alastair? Should they go to vBrownbag.com? Is there a Twitter handle? Is there a combination of? Where are they best to stay up to date for all things vBrownbag?
Well, naturally, there's multiple sources of truth here. So if Twitter is your natural place, then follow at vBrownbag. And we have updates on there. We have an automated system so that whenever a new podcast episode is published, there is a tweet with a link to the video on YouTube. But at the same time, on the vBrownbag.com blog site, and I agree it's a little hidden in this theme, you can find it at the bottom of the page. But on the vBrownbag.com blog site, there is a new post goes out there as well, so good place to be. But you can also subscribe to the YouTube channel, to the vBrownbag YouTube channel, and be notified for every new video that's posted there. So we try and get it out through wherever our people are listening. And of course, the iTunes feed also gets you all of the episodes. And if you subscribe to the Tech Talks iTunes feed, then you'll start getting some content again post Explore in September.
Nice. Sounds like multiple ways for all of the community members that are out there in whichever format that they want to choose to consume the product portfolio that is vBrownbag.
Yeah, and it is primarily all video content. So we do stick with video content, and we stick with putting the presenter at the center of it rather than doing lots of flashy production around it.
Alastair, remind me to add you to the affiliate podcast list on podcast.vmware.com. If you go to podcast.vmware.com, it's a new site that we built. We scrape and put episodes there and then drive people to landing pages to the individual podcasts. I think we have like 15 podcasters now that are listed there, and it's an RSS feed, so people can add it to their RSS feed. So podcast.vmware.com, and we can get the vBrownbag ones listed there as well. So I'll take an action item to reach out to you to get that, because I was pretty much blown away when I went to your site and looked around, right? Yeah, again, prepping for this show today, I went and looked around like, wow, this is really, really nice. And you have transitioned into the whole podcast space very, very, very nicely. And so, yeah, we should, and that podcast.vmware.com is just to use the .com traffic that we can drive to, drive people to shows, right? And so looking forward to that. Okay, so last bit. Because we are on youtube.com/vbarbecue, we always ask people at the end of the show, the last 5 minutes, Alastair, in New Zealand, do you get to barbecue? Isn't it beautiful weather all the time out there? And if you do get to barbecue, what do you like to barbecue? And if you don't barbecue, what's your favorite barbecue place in New Zealand? Some else.
So we do barbecue here. It is what you in America would call a grill primarily, although we have seen an increase of smokers coming here, driven largely by the US-based barbecue competition video TV shows that we get here now. I am very partial to a good sausage myself, and that's one of my go-tos for a barbecue. Unlike Australia, we don't tend to put very much seafood on the barbecue. And the weather here is mild all of the time. So it's currently our autumn, fall. And today is going to get to, in freedom units, somewhere around 65 degrees. Our coldest temperatures in the winter will be a daytime high of around 40 degrees. And the hottest temperature ever recorded where I live in Tauranga in New Zealand is about 92 Fahrenheit. So it's very moderate here. We get quite a lot of rainfall. So the Maori name, the native name for the country, is the land of the long white cloud, Aotearoa. And that's because we're surrounded by ocean, and the wind blows over, clouds hit the mountains and dump water. Happily, I'm on the east coast, which is downwind, and so there's a range of mountains between me and the Shire, where the Hobbiton set is, and they take all of the rainfall, and it just comes down the rivers to us. So we have a really nice climate here, where it's lush and green, but doesn't rain on us continuously. Just a lot.
Speaking of the Shire, I was going to say that, like, I see you out in the Shire, having a barbecue out there. And there is, when Oculus Rift first came out, somebody had went down to the Lord of the Rings in New Zealand and taken a 360 camera and sat, and I guess they've done some restoration of that area, and then did kind of the walk from Bilbo's house down over to where they had the picnic with the big oak tree there. And it was pretty fun to just do that virtual environment. Beautiful country, beautiful.
Yeah, it's a tourist attraction, and it really is literally across the other side of a range of hills from me. It takes about 45 minutes to get there from here. It's open as a tourist attraction. If you do come to New Zealand, it is definitely a worthwhile activity. And the other one that's internationally known is down in Wellington at the Weta Cave. So Weta Workshops, actual publicity place where you can go through and see props that were made for various films in there. You can't take any photos because they're still the property of the filmmakers, but that's another really cool Hollywood-related.
Yeah, they have some YouTube videos that kind of show some of that going on, right? It's a lot of fun, right? So it's pretty fun to see that. And so get that to New Zealand. Do they actually let people in at this point, or is the island still locked down?
And that's one of the things that's changed this week. So this week we have opened up to quarantine-free travel for vaccinated travelers from one of 60 countries where there's a visa waiver scheme in place. So it's most of the large population countries that are close to us. So just this week, for the first time in 2 years, we've welcomed people who are coming in as tourists or people who are non-citizens, non-essential workers. It's just now open to those 60 countries.
Still interesting, scary times, but hopefully we'll slowly figure out how to do this. I follow some of the sailors, right? The global sailors, and it's been hard because they do stops. They go to Australia, then they go down to New Zealand, and there's the, what do they call it? Not hurricanes. What do you call the big storms that come through? Anyway, not cyclones. No, they go through Asia a lot of times, but typhoons. And so you get the wet typhoon season. So everybody goes to New Zealand or Australia and ports up for those 4 months. But because of the blockades, they wouldn't let the 50-foot, 60-foot cats guys sail around there.
Not if there were if some of the crew weren't New Zealand citizens or permanent residents. And I have a friend whose husband is one of the deep sea sailors, and he's been at home for an unreasonable amount of time during this because the voyages just aren't happening.
Right, and you have to time the typhoons, the rainy season, to the wind patterns. So there is a known way to do this. You had to go here, 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 here. And if you take these spots off the chessboard, you don't get very far. You're stuck in a typhoon somewhere, and it could be dangerous. So, well, Alastair Cooke, good to always connect with you. Can't wait to see you in 3D. Time flies. It's already May, so go check out registration and go. If you got a cool idea, my favorite idea was when somebody took a bunch of SD chips, USB chips, SD cards, and then put them in array and made a storage unit out of them and made a vSAN storage unit. And then we ran it, and it ran for like 3 minutes before the whole thing cooked and blew smoke. But those are kind of the sessions that are fun, that if you're doing some kind of cool, fun thing that obviously would never make it to VMworld sessions, it is fun to have these kind of community sessions where you've learned something interesting and you want to share it with people, done something kooky, you want to share it with people. This is the place place to go do it. It's fun, and it's good to see people come up and get on the show. You get a session. You can tell your boss that you're doing a session at VMworld. You get your session ID. It gets recorded, so it's legit. You're in the content calendar, but at the same time, it's open for more interesting, cool, fun topics. So go check it out. See if you can come up with stuff. I know we're looking for sessions still.
That weird thing that you think that you might be the only one that is used or implemented.
Right.
That you may have, because you have taken the time out to present it, you may join into another smaller community of those fellow operators that are out there that you will make lifelong connections with.
Absolutely. And with that,
one other aspect before you wrap us up is that we have a deadline on those submissions. So the conference team would like those submissions as soon as possible, and I'll make myself unpopular with them yet again by going a little later than they're asking for. But by the end of next week, please, by the 20th, is when I am certain that I will be able to get them into the content catalog and schedule builder. Sessions that come in after that, we can probably still schedule. They just won't be so publicized.
Right. That's important to say. The event team is banging on us to get sessions in content calendar. They are telling us next week. So I always tell my boss that if you want me to do something, don't just tell me what you want me to do. Tell me when you want me to do it, because that drives everything. And I can do anything anytime you want. So yes, we have like a week to get sessions in. Go to Alastair's vBrownbag. He put a green link on top now. Easy to find. Come up with a session. Give us, if you have one in mind, and go look for some cheap hotels in the Bay Area. I know that's tricky, but
cheap there being a very relative term.
You can go across the bridge. You can find some cheaper places. Still, you might not be downtown.
Rent a barge.
But this is our opportunity to put on our masks and come together. And Graham says bring a tent for Eric's backyard. Definitely, I'm down for that as well. Right. We will figure out how to get you space if you really want to come. And I would encourage everybody to come, because it was really amazing last week to get to see everybody and be together. And I was actually energized. So if you're feeling a little stressed, feeling a little bit like, why am I still working in my career? What am I doing? You probably need a VMworld. You need a VMware Explore, because it does give you a shot in the arm to see people and remember that we're all in this together and that we're all doing cool stuff. So go register and get yourself a vBrownbag session. Yep. All right, Alastair, Matt, thanks a lot for your time today. We'll be back again next week as always. 12 to 1, you can drop into TalkShoe and say hello to us if you want. Shout out to Graham and Tony. Thanks for always showing up on TalkShoe. Talk to you guys later. Thanks, Alastair.